Hello there, Star Wars fans, and today I'm bringing you an all-new fan fiction. I really enjoyed writing this one. Again, it's a fan fiction, so we have some fun with it. Don't take it too seriously, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing these. If you enjoy them, please do consider leaving a like. Please do subscribe. We've got more coming on the way. We're going to start really ramping things up here. It can be a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun doing these. I appreciate each and every one of you. And let's get into today's fan fiction. What if Darth Vader went to Tatooine for the Death Star plans in A New Hope? I enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. Leave a comment, by the way, if you do enjoy. The Empire, led by Darth Vader, has boarded the Tantive 4 in order to recover the stolen Death Star plans. After killing rebel soldiers and tearing the ship apart, Princess Leia of Alderaan has been captured. Lord Vader and an Imperial officer make their way down the hull of the ship after taking Leia away. Lord Vader, holding her is dangerous. It could bring sympathy for the rebellion in the Senate, the officer said. And Vader responded to him saying, I have traced the rebel spies to her. Now she is my only link to finding their secret base. But she will die before she tells you anything, the officer protested. Leave that to me. And then another officer entered the room and gave an update on where the Death Star plans were. Lord Vader, the plans are not aboard this ship, and no transmissions were made, but an escape pod was jettisoned from the ship with no life forms aboard. It landed on the surface of Tatooine, just below us. Vader stood in silence for a moment. The officers couldn't tell, but underneath the frightening mask, Vader felt extreme despair and fear thinking about Tatooine. Of course, that's the planet they were above. Of course it was. But he was Darth Vader, Lord of the Sith. He feared nothing, he told himself. He would go to the Sand Planet, and he would retrieve the plans himself. I will lead a squad down to the surface and retrieve the plans. Prepare my ship and a squad of troopers, and no one talks to the princess until I return. Yes, my lord, the first officer replied. And Vader strode away, then sat in his chambers as his departure was organized. He opened himself up to some Sith meditation, focusing on Tatooine. Vader thought about the previous times he was on the planet, and immediately the hatred, the pain, the suffering. It was overwhelming, but Vader stayed, listening and feeling it all. He saw Tusken Raiders holding his mother captive, beating her, torturing her. And then he saw them being cut down by a dark shadow with a blue saber. And then his mother died in that shadow's arms. He saw a young boy doing a slave's work, a miserable life for the boy and his mother. And then he saw Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan and Padme appeared. What? Vader thought. Padme appeared as she did all those years ago on Tatooine, but she was pregnant in these visions, and Obi-Wan watched over her. Vader felt the anger build inside of him. It was a fire. He hated this planet, and now he would return, no longer as a frightened boy, but as the most powerful being in the galaxy, he told himself. He got up, and he went to his waiting and now ready ship. But as he boarded, he looked at the squad sent to assist him. This mission was personal for Vader. I will go alone. Get back to your stations immediately, he told the troopers. And of course they did so without any hesitation. Vader sat down and began flying towards Tatooine. The planet from a distance looked just as vile as ever, he thought. Obi-Wan, I trust you feel it. Anakin, Darth Vader, he is coming, Qui-Gon said to a meditating Kenobi. Obi-Wan saw the Star Destroyer above the planet, and he felt for Vader. It had been roughly 10 years since their last encounter, and Kenobi had been well hidden on this planet because Vader, he feared it too much to even consider coming back. I don't think he knows I'm here. Could it be Luke, or something else of importance to him or the Empire? Obi-Wan asked Qui-Gon. I cannot say. It's the will of the Force to bring him here. Perhaps a final battle to finally destroy Vader. It's on the planets that he and Anakin fear the most, Qui-Gon replied. But Master, how can I find him? How can I protect Luke? Trust your instincts, Obi-Wan. Where would his anger lead him? Qui-Gon said as he began to fade away. Obi-Wan understood. He'd been training here, talking to Qui-Gon for many years now. ever since, really, his last encounter with Vader. Him and Qui-Gon have trained. Obi-Wan has become much stronger in the Force, and he is ready for this duel, ready for this battle. He would make the short trip now to the Lars homestead and wait. He had to assume that's where Vader would end up, and if not, he had to be there to at least protect Luke and his family. After all, maybe Vader was here for something completely separate of him and Luke. Maybe Vader would just do what he had to do, and just leave until Obi-Wan and Luke were truly ready. Darth Vader landed his ship just outside of Mos Espa, his hometown, as a child slave. He had a mission to complete. He had to find the Death Star plans for the Empire. That was his mission. But the word revenge kept burning in his head until it became the only thing Vader could think about. He got out of his ship, and he felt the coarse, rough, irritating sand below his mechanical feet. It was getting everywhere on his suit, and as he walked ahead, he went straight for a second, and then, looking ahead, he saw a second-hand parts shop he'd spent so many days inside of as a child. He walked through the town of Mos Espa, people either too shocked to move or immediately running away. No in between. People feared this man. But Vader paid them no attention. He was not here for them. He didn't care about their meaningless lives to him. Instead, he entered a small door to the shop that he noticed. This was Watto's shop. The shop he'd met Qui-Gon and Padme. And the Toydarian Watto was across the room behind a table, fluttering a foot above the ground with his wings. An annoying sound, thought Vader. And as Vader walked in, Watto looked at him, cocked his head sideways. He'd become a rather old and frail man in his time here, likely headed to retirement any day now. "Aren't you something, huh? What are you, some kind of droid? I could use that box on your chest there. I bet I could sell it for a pretty penny before I close up shop in a few days," the bug told Vader. But he did not respond. Instead, he glared at him with a fury Watto couldn't even see. Instead, Vader reached up, freezing Watto with the Force, igniting his crimson saber, walked up to the bug and stabbed him through the chest. "This is for Shmi, for my mother." Watto stared at him, horrified as he died. His final word before he did die was a confused, "Ani?" And Vader dropped him, then lit his entire shop on fire. His mind was angry, but this made it much more clear. The word revenge escaped his mind for now. He'd gotten revenge on the bug that had destroyed his life as a child. Then he thought to himself, what would happen to an escape pod on Tatooine? Or rather, where would one be taken? Jawas, Vader thought. The small animal scavengers wouldn't hesitate to scavenge an escape pod, or any droids inside of it. Vader boarded an abandoned speeder near the shop, gave one final look to the fire, and took off to the horizon to find the right Jawas that had taken or had ransacked an escape pod. Vader began speeding along the sand dunes in the Tatooine night, feeling out in the Force for the Jawas. He soon discovered the escape pod along with droid tracks that would meet up with sandcrawler tracks. Sandcrawlers, the machine, the rolling machine of the Jawas. Now all Vader had to do was follow these tracks, and he sped along until the suns rose, the twin suns, the agonizing heat that he'd dealt with forever as a child was much worse in his suit. But finally, a few miles in the distance, a Jawa sandcrawler, he'd followed the tracks and had finally found it, and it was in the same region, Vader knew, as the Lars homestead, which he'd formerly buried his mother near. He approached. Kenobi arrived at the Lars home a while ago, waiting, watching, wondering what was next, and a Jawa sandcrawler rolled up and showed up, and droids were lined up outside of it. A couple astromechs, protocol droids, and some droids even Kenobi didn't recognize. Droids resembling R2-D2 and C-3PO from Kenobi's time in the Clone Wars. Kenobi remembered the little astromech that Anakin shared such a special, unique bond with. And then it hit him. Could that actually be R2? Could those be the droids Vader might be looking for? Obi-Wan didn't have time to think about it fully before his worst fears became realized. A darkness washed over him, and in the distance a dark figure riding a speeder. "I will do what I must," Kenobi said to himself as he prepared to make his way down, ready to finally do it this time. Vader he ended up arriving at the sand crawler, out of view of anyone, he'd thought. He didn't have time for games. He knew the Jawas had his Death Star plans, and he would get them back by any means necessary. Vader pulled the door away with the Force and pulled the first Jawa he saw towards him. "The droids from the escape pod. Where are they?" Vader said in a menacing voice. The frightened Jawa squealed and pointed towards the outside where droids were being sold. Vader had been so caught up in his own hatred of the planet and his determination to reach the sand crawler that he didn't realize he was actually here. The Lars homestead, the people who didn't stop the sand people from capturing his mother, from killing Shmi. The word revenge began circulating in Vader's mind again. Kill the Lars. Grab the droids. Easy. Vader used his anger to push the entire wall of the sandcrawler off of its hinges. He lifted it and threw it aside. Vader then stepped out, igniting his red lightsaber. The man he knew to be Owen ushered a young boy behind him, and Vader felt a sudden rush of the Force. Someone here was strong in the Force. Could it be that boy? And as Vader stepped towards them, a lightsaber ignited on his right. "Let them go, Darth. Face me," an all too familiar voice spoke. In 1 second, a million thoughts hit Vader. Obi-Wan? Why hide here? Why reveal himself now? "Obi-Wan, I've been searching for you for years. All this time, you've been nothing but a rat on Tatooine. What is your game, Obi-Wan? What are you protecting? Who are you protecting?" Vader turned to the young boy and Owen. He let the Force flow through him and felt the boy. He could feel the Force. He was powerful. "I see. Tell me, Obi-Wan, how does it feel to fail?" And Vader pulled Luke towards his saber, and right as Luke was about to hit it, Kenobi's blue saber knocked and blocked Vader backwards, and the two then stood face to face, Luke behind them on the ground disheveled. "Today, Kenobi, you will die," and the two engaged in a duel that would determine the fate of Luke Skywalker, the fate of the galaxy. Vader began swinging with extreme anger and aggression, while Obi-Wan calculated his defensive blocks and his counter swings. Vader had the clear strength advantage, but Obi-Wan was much more in control of his emotions. It was an even fight. Kenobi had not been just resting here. Since Qui-Gon revealed himself, he'd been training and had become very powerful in the Force. Slowly, their swings began to match each other, and suddenly they were the only two beings in the galaxy. Master and apprentice, Anakin and Obi-Wan, heroes of the Clone Wars, brothers turned enemies, the Sith and the Jedi. The galaxy was on their shoulders, as it was since the day Obi-Wan agreed to train Anakin. The duel of Anakin's fate on Naboo, and now the duel of Luke's fate on Tatooine. Swing after swing, neither side gaining an advantage. Despite being apart for years, they still knew each other. Both saw an opening and tried to push the other backwards, hands refusing to connect like two magnets going against each other, reminiscent to that fateful night on Mustafar. Then both of them went flying back, Kenobi into the Lars home and Vader right into the sandcrawler. Kenobi landed, and then Vader got up as well and strode down the steps to find Kenobi. And there, in the hallway leading to the main area, Kenobi jumped out and swung at Vader. The two continued their duel, the sabers scorching the walls as they blocked and swung at one another. "There is no escape for you," Vader said as he forced bricks and parts of the wall down on a defending Kenobi. Obi-Wan blocked the attack in time to jump backwards, away from another saber swing. "You cannot win, Darth. I won't allow it this time," Kenobi said, and it was clear to him this fight was going to go on for a while. There was no assurance he would win. So he decided it was time for a risky strategy, using Vader's emotions against him. This planet had scarred Anakin, scarred Vader, and while this strategy would lead to Vader becoming extremely powerful for a bit, if Obi-Wan could hang on, he could defeat an unstable Vader. Kenobi then pushed Vader back just enough to taunt him. "You buried your mother right around here, Anakin." Imagine the disappointment if she could see her son now. This angered the Sith Lord to no end. Vader punched the ground, sending a ripple that knocked Obi-Wan against the wall. Vader then threw his saber while screaming in hatred, and Obi-Wan barely dodged it, flipping back then to the main clearing area. He tried again. "This is how you carry on your wife's legacy, by becoming something you know she would have given her own life to destroy. This is where you two met, if I remember correctly. She would hate what you've become, Anakin." Again, this tore Vader up, but it did not break him. He was strong, but Kenobi was close. They both knew it. Vader grabbed tables and chairs all around, doing whatever he could, and threw all of them at Obi-Wan, who caught most with the Force, but one struck him, knocking him to the ground, dazed. As Kenobi tried to recover, Vader grabbed him by the throat, lifted him up, and pulled back his saber to strike. One more chance, Obi-Wan thought. He had to try this desperate move. "What about your son?" Kenobi gasped finally, and he felt it. Vader was hit with a realization he knew to be true. The young boy Kenobi was guarding was his son. Kenobi felt this shift in Vader and pulled his saber back to his hand, then quickly cut off Vader's hand, holding him up. Then another precise slash cut Vader's mask, revealing his broken eyes, and another through his breathing tube, enough to hinder him, but not kill him. Kenobi had struck the right emotions in Vader, to knock him down, to render him hopeless momentarily. Obi-Wan then looked at Anakin. "Yes, Anakin, your son, Padme's son, the son the Emperor kept from you," Obi-Wan said. Vader breathed slowly, hoarsely. "But I killed her. How is this possible?" "She died because of what you became, Anakin. She didn't die from your hand. Rather, her heart could not live without Anakin Skywalker." And here they were, Anakin and Obi-Wan, Vader and Ben. Obi-Wan, for the third time, had Vader just sitting there to be killed. Once on Mustafar, then on Vancor, now on Tatooine. Vader looked up at the eyes of Obi-Wan, and these eyes were Anakin's eyes now, and Obi-Wan spoke to him. "I'm sorry, Anakin," and he held up the blue saber. He held it up ready to strike him down. But he couldn't. For a third time, Obi-Wan could do nothing but feel sorry for his fallen brother. A tear rolled down his face, and he prepared to put the saber down, once again failing. Suddenly, though, Vader pulled the blue saber and sent it straight through his chest, completely cutting off the breathing tubes for Darth Vader. Obi-Wan gasped and stumbled backwards, unsure of what to say. Anakin had won. He'd won against Vader, and he spoke, using the Force to sustain him for a few moments. "Obi-Wan, tell my son about Anakin. Anakin was his father, not Vader. Tell him about Padme, the Clone Wars, our missions together. Tell my son about Anakin Skywalker. And please," in a final breath, "bury me next to my mother." And Anakin fell forward, dying. In the end, Vader lost, on the very planet where Anakin's journey began. Obi-Wan would bury him next to Shmi. The Lars family relocated, and Obi-Wan took Luke to begin his training with Qui-Gon and Yoda. That's where I'm going to end this one. There will not, or very likely not, be a part 2 to this, as it's a story about Vader. You guys can imagine, what do you think happens after this? Let me know if you were to do a second part to this. I hand it off to a new writer. But I really wanted to do just a Vader story, Vader Obi-Wan kind of story, with Luke being kind of the only thing that can truly bring Vader back. I think that's true. I think Luke was the only one that could. And once again, just hearing about him having a son kind of just does a 180 on the fight. I really wanted to do a story like this. It's something I'd been thinking about for a while, and I really enjoyed it. I understand if you don't think that's how it would end, with Vader and Anakin just kind of submitting in the end, literally driving his own saber into his chest. But I get it. You know, I wanted to do something like it. It's a fun way, an emotional way. I think a story like this would be fun to see. But yeah, let me know. I mean, if you want to know, I guess the events would play out relatively similar, with Obi-Wan finding about the plans, taking Luke, only he trains enough without fighting Vader in order to eventually take on the Emperor. They rescue Leia. Han and Chewie can find their way into it. But perhaps Luke trains with Kenobi and Yoda. Part 2 can be up to you. Again, I just really wanted to do a story like this, where Vader has to confront all of his demons on Tatooine and lose to them. But once again, please do leave a like, please do subscribe, comment, do all the YouTube stuff. Thank you. Much appreciated. I will see you in the next video.